morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Connection. To those of you who are joining us online, we're coming to you from Spirit and Truth Sanctuary, where we have a very happy and healthy group of people this morning. Say, yay! Can you hear? As has become our custom, we'll begin with our devotion, for which we will open our minds and set our hearts in the right place by saying together our prayer of surrender. Spirit of truth, carry me where you will. Bring to me what you will. Take from me what you will. Awaken in me what you will. The Christ man is around me. The Christ mind is in me. The Christ power flows through me. And the Christ mystery exists as me. I believe it. I perceive it. And now I receive it. I am surrendered. Amen. And so it is. Okay, today, March 14th. Who knows what tomorrow is? The Ides of March, if you know your Shakespeare. The title of our devotion today is The Power of Silence. And here is our affirmation. Let's read that together. My words are powerful, and I will use them wisely. I will not allow the opinion of others to make me speak too quickly. All right, I'm just going to begin reading the text of the devotion if you want to follow along if you have your book. People will remember not the words of their enemies, but the silence of their friends. This famous quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is often used as a reproach when people feel others should speak out about a situation or speak up for a certain cause or a person, and they don't. So sometimes people weaponize that phrase and use it against people by saying, "Why aren't you saying something?" However, there's a difference between silence that is an absence of presence because you don't care or you don't feel or you feel intimidated to speak, and silence that is potent because its purpose is to listen deeply to your inner guidance and anchor down into the power that is produced from true righteousness before you speak. This type of silence is about gathering power before a battle, just like a warrior. If you don't go within and receive knowledge from your higher self before you speak, especially when the stakes are high and the situation is one in which your words could easily be misunderstood, you run the risk of your words and or actions not being as effective as they could be. Okay, I want to stop right here before we read the last paragraph and say our prayer and give you just one example and maybe add a layer on top of this concept. I'm going to go ahead and give it away and tell you I wrote today's devotion because I want to tell you what the inspiration for it was. A few years ago, I was watching a video by a woman who I follow on YouTube, and it was during the summer when the Black Lives Matter movement the protests were going on. And so she was saying that, and she was a white woman like me, and her point was, look, white people should not be trying to take the lead right now. And she was saying she was feeling some pressure from some of her friends because she had this public platform of a YouTube channel, and they were pushing her to make some sort of statement about the whole situation. But she was saying that even though she was very supportive and that she considers herself to be an ally to people of color, she said she really felt like the right thing to do at the time was just to be quiet and listen. And she took the opportunity then in this video to explain why. She said she felt that there is a difference between remaining silent because you're apathetic or because you just don't want to get involved, and being silent because you're pausing and going within and processing and thinking it through before you speak, instead of just blurting out the first thing that comes into your head. And she described it like I did in the devotion. She said it's the quiet, it's the silence, it's the stillness that a warrior gets into before he knows he's gonna have to go into battle. And so some people refer to it as getting your head together or getting your mind right. And when I read that, I thought about that movie, what was it, the the Green Mile, or the last about the guy in prison, and he was practicing for his execution, one of the other prisoners, and he was saying, "Wait a minute, still getting right with Jesus." It was just, so you got to get yourself right with Jesus before you know you're going to go into a difficult situation. Or, as in this case, staying quiet on purpose because you understand somehow that you're not the one that's supposed to be talking in that moment. Okay, you're not the one that's always supposed to be in the spotlight. When someone else has more wisdom about a situation, or they've experienced in a way that you never could, like in this situation with me and the other white woman, then you just know that it's time for you to stay in the background and let someone else take the lead. You can also look at it in terms of masculine and feminine energy, and this is the layer I'm going to add to it, and this has nothing to do with whether you are a man or a woman. As individuals, we all have both masculine energy and feminine energy, and each of them serve a different purpose, and we have to learn when to let each energy lead according to what's appropriate in that particular situation. The feminine energy is receptive, and it's the one that hangs back a little and watches and waits for the perfect time and opportunity. The feminine energy knows when to let someone else lead. It is very patient and it ponders. The masculine energy is the one that takes action. It's the one that speaks up and forges ahead. But unless you've spent some time in your feminine energy first, regardless of your gender, then your masculine can be kind of like a bull in a china shop, just going in and knocking stuff over and breaking things. Now, the feminine energy gives the masculine energy its direction. A lot of men do not want to hear that. They do not want to accept it, but that is the truth. Just look at where the world is right now with all the war going on, because we've been masculine energy heavy for so long. So, taking it away from the physical now and going back to our metaphor, when you let your masculine loose too soon, your masculine energy, you run the risk of your words and or actions not being as effective as they could be, as the devotion said. Our inner world is feminine. Our outer world is masculine. So what is the saying? As within, so without. Which one of those was first? Within. All right. So you've got to get your inner world right before you act in your outer world. Let's go back to the words of the devotion one more time. You have to go within and consult your higher self's wisdom first, so that your words and actions will be as powerful as they can possibly be. Okay, last paragraph now. Some issues do not require your immediate response. Don't let anyone rush you into speaking before you are sure what it is you want to say. And I'm going to add to that, or rush you into taking any action before you're sure what it is you want to do. I'm sure the reason that I didn't add that in the devotion was just because of the word count, because we had to make every devotion fit on a single page. So that it does apply, though, to both our words and our actions. All right, so let's say our ending prayer together. Patient God, help me today learn that pausing before I speak, especially on important matters, is wise. May I always use the most effective words available to me in every situation. Amen. All right, so moving on to the teaching today, the inspiration for this topic came from 3 different sources, which all happened to come together this past Sunday. One was the devotion from this past Sunday, and then the next one was from my brother's sermon, and the third was from the prayer that our beautiful member Jennifer Culberson Adams prayed that day. One particular phrase she used in her prayer really stuck out to me, and that's what I have used as my title today. She said, "Why not choose greatness?" I love that. I'm going to back up a little now and revisit the devotion from Sunday, and then we'll move on to her prayer and to my brother's sermon and expand on it all. The devotion that day was called Get Happy, Stay Happy, Be Happy. And I talked about the scripture that says, in whatever state I find myself, I have therefore learned to be content. And I pointed out that the use of that word learned there indicates that it's a choice, that it's something we can learn how to do. And if we begin to practice being content by choosing it over and over again, it will eventually become our state of being. So contentment, or we could also use the word happiness here, is not just something we stumble upon or that is meant for only a few people who win the lottery of life and are happy because they just always have good luck and things seem to always work out for them. But happiness is something that any of us and all of us can choose and that we can learn to cultivate. So then a few minutes later, after I did the responsive reading, which was the devotion that day, Jennifer got up and she expanded on that idea a little bit. She asked the question, why be mediocre when you have the capacity and the capability to be great? That's a really good question. Then she said, being great and settling for mediocrity are both choices. That being the case, since they're both a choice, then why not choose greatness? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, about how exactly we go about doing that. Jennifer ended her prayer by giving us one of our first steps. She said, greatness is not the result of circumstance or chance, but a matter of conscious choice and discipline. And that's what we need to do. Once we make the conscious choice to be great, to do the best we can do, to be the best version of ourselves, then we need a little discipline. It's not just going to happen. So discipline to do what? The discipline to make the best choices for ourselves, which leads me to my brother's sermon. You see how this is all just flowing together. He talked about two areas in particular that we need to be disciplined in that I want to highlight today. The first is realizing that when either a spiritual practice or a religion, that area of your life, or a relationship with a particular person is no longer working for you, when it's no longer allowing you to grow and to be the best you can be, then it's time to let it go. You have to have the discipline to make that choice, which is often difficult. He gave the example of a rocket, and he compared it to relationships with people. He said the people you begin your journey with are not always the people you end your journey with. They're not the same people sometimes. Sometimes some people are only meant to be in our lives for a season, and as we continue to grow, they may not be growing in the same direction, and they may not be growing at the same pace that you are. And then he said it's just like the boosters or the thrusters on a rocket. They're not meant to stay attached to the space shuttle all the way to the moon. Okay, their only purpose is to provide it with enough power to get it out of the Earth's atmosphere, to escape the Earth's gravitational pull. And then they fall off because they're no longer needed. And what's more, furthermore, if they stayed attached, they would actually at some point become detrimental to the shuttle because they're just too heavy. They just become dead weight. Once they've spent their fuel, they're kind of like excess baggage, and they become a drag on the rocket's power if they don't detach. So we've all been in those relationships. They're not beneficial to us anymore because maybe, as I just said, the person they're not headed in the same direction as you anymore, or they're moving much slower than you are. So the relationship starts to feel heavy. Okay, it starts to feel awkward. And if you don't detach from it, it will pull you off your course. It will mess up the trajectory you have set for your own path to greatness. So how do we detach from these relationships, though? How do we do it the right way? How we do it matters. It's important. And that is a choice too. I'm going to read a little now from the wonderful book that we've been reading from every week for the past couple of weeks, Danielle Laporte's How to Be Loving. And this section she calls Bless and Release. She says, if you've done your metaphysical homework, you've probably come across the idea of cutting energy cords with people and places. Has anybody ever heard of that phrase, that you cut your it's a ritual some people go through in their mind to cut themselves off from the energy of either a person or a situation. You've learned to send all that energy back to its source and cut those cords. This practice can be a powerful remedy to imbalances and a way to protect ourselves. But sometimes it can be difficult to dissolve energetic ties with people you're angry at, or to forget a situation that felt wounding or hurtful. The cutting ties gesture can have an underlying aggression which will only generate more angst. Okay, I want to stop here and give you another visual example that I've talked about before. I got this one from Andrew Martin. He said that when we get into this mode of aggressively trying to cut ties with people, it's a little like having what he calls a spiritual leaf blower. And he says, when you send them and their energy away from you forcefully because you're angry or because you're hurt, it's just like blowing leaves into your neighbor's yard, okay, or out into the street. They may not be in your yard anymore, but they haven't disappeared. They've just become someone else's problem to deal with. And maybe that's appropriate in certain cases, but it would be better to transmute or heal that energy if you can. So I'm not sure what the equivalent would be in that analogy with the leaves. Excuse me, but I think you get my point. What was it we said a week or two ago? Conflict only serves as fuel for more conflict. So this idea of cutting people out of your life in an almost angry way is probably not the best option. Let's go back to Danielle. She says, we want to gently and thoroughly let go of all the residual scars of a painful connection or event. And then we offer it up to be transformed into a higher vibration with the help of the divine. We don't want to approach it as cutting away or separating from our sorrow or the person who we believe caused it. It's more about turning to the divine with our pain and being healed through that connection, our connection with the divine. So I'm going to interject here that a visual I like to use is, if it's whether it's a relationship or a situation, I like to envision it. It's so much more loving to just imagine yourself laying it on an altar. Okay, just giving it up and then asking God to take it rather than all of this cutting and separating and anger and aggression. Okay, final thought about this from Danielle. Ultimately, she says it's about identifying with our expansive nature instead of feeling constricted. Constriction grips. Expansion lets things flow. And when we're expanded, we open ourselves to receive more healing and blessings. Bless and release. Or as my brother always says, bless them coming into your life, bless them going from your life. I was listening to our friend Reverend John Scott the other day on Instagram, and he said something very similar. He was talking about when you're in the process of a spiritual awakening, a lot of people in your life are going to be upset because you're changing. And if they're not changing, then that's going to make them uncomfortable, and they may start to judge you. And his advice was, instead of focusing on their judgment, concentrate on your own awakening. Send them love and continue to wake up. And I love the way he said that. Send them love, but continue to wake up. Stay on your own trajectory. There's no need to be nasty about it. If you feel the need to be nasty, you're probably not having a genuine spiritual awakening experience. That's something else entirely. Like Danielle Laporte was saying, a spiritual awakening will always cause you to expand, to be bigger, okay? Not to get small and petty. A spiritual awakening is all about integrating, as we've talked about before, all of the parts of yourself together, not fragmenting yourself. And the higher the vibration you're on, the more you'll start to see and know that we're all connected. We're all one. So someone may indeed be moving at a different pace than you, or moving in a little bit different direction because their journey is a little bit different, but they're still part of us. So if we cut them off entirely, we're just fragmenting a part of ourselves. So it's like your heart, okay, and the rest of your internal organs, they function very differently and experience your body very differently than the outside than your fingers or your eyes or whatever else. But they're all still a part of your body, and they're all working together. So that's one of the choices we must make sometimes on our road to greatness, to let go gently by blessing and releasing those relationships that are no longer serving us and helping us grow. So what else do we need the discipline to let go of when we realize it's no longer working for us or allowing us to be the best version of ourselves? How about a specific religion or spiritual practice? Years ago, some of you might remember I did a teaching about this called Step Out of the Boat. All right, talking about sometimes when the religion we've grown up in is not working for us anymore. So I want to just read you some little parts of that again, because I did this whole metaphor that I really like about boats. It says different kinds of boats are needed according to what kind of water you're in, whether it's calm or choppy, whether it's whitewater rapids or a lake. You need a different kind of boat for fishing than you do for traveling a great distance. There are boats specifically designed to sail and be powered only by the wind. There are boats that are made just to race, to go really fast. There are even boats whose only purpose is to pull other boats. They're called tugboats, okay? And they pull the huge ships in and out of the harbors. The boat is just the vehicle we use to navigate our way through life. So, in this analogy, let's say that the boat is our spiritual practice. And just as there are lots of different kinds of boats, all with different purposes, there are also lots of different kinds of spiritual practices. As we know, there are many different religions, and there are also many different specific ways to practice each of those religions within the same religion. The main thing to remember is that spirituality and a spiritual practice is not a one-size-fits-all proposition. Just like the wheel over there that we have on the wall, okay? There are many different roads that all lead to the center, and if you look over there, see what's in the center, that's the dove, that's spirit, but all those different roads lead to the same place. Each road, each religion, each boat has its own approach and path to the center, and it's okay for each of us to be comfortable in a different boat. It's even okay for you to use several different boats throughout the course of your life, depending on your particular needs at the time. Some teachings and or spiritual practices are only meant to be a part of your life for a season. Just like we were talking about a few minutes ago that my brother said some relationships, some people are only meant to be in your life for a season. It's the same thing with a religion or a spiritual practice. Once they have accomplished what they were supposed to accomplish in you, you no longer need that particular practice. We all move and learn at a different pace. Some people are comfortable sticking with the same basic philosophy for years or even a lifetime, while others move through different seasons of their lives where a variety of different practices are needed. You should think of your spiritual practice as a boat carrying you on the sea of life. Once you reach the shore, you step out of the boat because you no longer need it. You don't need a boat on dry land, and you walk for a while on the land, wherever it is that spiritual practice has whatever level that spiritual practice has taken you to. But as you continue to grow, okay, as John Scott said, as you continue to awaken, you inevitably come to another body of water for which you again need a boat. But maybe it's a very different kind of boat that you need this time than you did last time. And people get stuck when they won't get out of the boat, or when they insist on using the same boat for every different type of water. All right, so life is not static. Just like the sea isn't always the same. Sometimes it's rough and wild and choppy, and at other times it's very calm. Sometimes you're in deep water. Sometimes you're in shallow water where you can touch the bottom. So great big ships, think about it. Great big ships, as wonderful as they are, they're useless in shallow water. Just like a little bitty motorboat it has no business being miles and miles out at sea. But some people cannot transfer this idea to their religion, to their spiritual practice. They say things like, my mama was a Baptist, my grandmama was a Baptist, I was born a Baptist, I'm going to die a Baptist. And having that kind of attitude about spirituality is what makes so many people think it doesn't work. Religion doesn't work. So when it's not so much that it doesn't work at all, it's just that one particular way to practice doesn't work all the time in every situation. So whatever spiritual practice or religion you were born into may work for you a lot of the time, but it's not wrong to seek out something else, or to put it a better way, to seek something more when that way is no longer working for you. And when you do, there's no reason to completely discount the entire Baptist church just because you've moved on to a different practice or a different perspective now. There's no need to go burn down all the Baptist churches or tell all the Baptists they're wrong. Maybe that perspective is still working for them. Maybe they need the Baptist boat at that particular point in their lives. So what did we say a minute ago, though? Bless and release, okay? Send them love and continue on awakening in your journey. So the mission, a lot of times, the mission of here at Spirit and Truth Sanctuary, how we operate is very different from most other churches. We do not place a big emphasis on bringing people down to an altar and leading them in what is known as a salvation experience, because that's not who we are and that's not what we're about in this ministry anymore. There was a time in our history that was an emphasis, and that wasn't wrong. It was just a step in our process. And there are other ministries like ours who continue to grow and evolve. And then there are others who never stop emphasizing the basic tenets of traditional Christianity. And churches and ministries like that are necessary. My brother compares it to school. He talks about driving by his elementary school from time to time now as an adult and remembering those days during that time of his life where he was having to learn those basics, like don't talk when the teacher's talking, like raise your hand and ask permission if you want to get up and go to the restroom, learn to stay in line, keep your hands to yourself. All those things are necessary for elementary age school children to learn. But how ridiculous would it be for him to go back now as a 50-year-old man into one of those classrooms and try to sit in those little desks and eat his little bologna sandwich and mini pack of Cheetos and drink his little carton of milk that's this big out of his $6 million man lunchbox. He can't survive on that anymore. It's not enough food for him as a 50-year-old man. His legs don't fit under those little desks anymore. And hopefully by now he's learned to conduct himself appropriately in the hallway without having to be told, don't touch your neighbor. So when he tells this story, like you did, laugh, we clearly see the ridiculousness of that. But as I said, we have a very hard time transferring that concept to our spirituality. None of us want to go burn down our elementary school because it's still serving a purpose for the people who are there now. But neither do any of us past 10 years old want to go back and live in that environment of our elementary school where we have to pledge allegiance to the flag every morning or practice our multiplication tables, because hopefully we've grown past the need for that. So at the end of our time in elementary school, we must step out of that boat and get into the middle school boat, and then into the high school boat, and then into the college boat, and then into the job boat, on and on and on. So there's one part of that. There's one part of that analogy that as we grow in our spiritual lives, we must determine when we have reached the shore and know when it's time to get out of one boat and into another. So in this part of the analogy, there's always going to be another body of water for which we need another boat. So shifting that just a bit now, the second part of the analogy is about our perception of the water itself. Okay, we've talked a good deal here on Tuesdays about how important our perception is. And as we grow and just live our daily lives, our perception of everything changes, or it should. Again, we can't stay in elementary school forever. The only constant in life is change. And as we grow spiritually, our perception of everything changes, even of God, as it should. We also know it's not God who changes, but our perception of him. God is the same, yesterday, today, and forever. But man's perception of God is constantly changing, evolving, and growing. Ideally, The longer we live, the more we come to understand the true nature of God. So a couple of years ago, we did a series on Wednesday night called How to Know God. And we used as our guide a book by Deepak Chopra by that same name. It says How to Know God. And so it talks about 7 stages of God, which, to be technically correct, are the 7 stages of man's perception of God based on our responses and reactions to things that happen to us throughout our lives. So I want to very briefly go over those now and give us a better understanding of the extremely wide range of experiences different people are having at any given point on their journey through life. It says each person is entitled to some version of God that seems real to him, yet many versions contradict one another. The God of any religion is only a fragment of God. There are basically 7 versions or stages of God, which can be associated with organized faiths. Each one is a fragment, but meets a particular human need, which is only natural. As humans, we fall into habits and repeated patterns because of our reliance on old imprints, okay? This is never more true than with our beliefs. In every religion, there is a streak of fear whenever a person is certain that the world is dominated by threat, danger, and sin. Yet, every religion also contains a strain of love whenever we perceive the world to be abundant, loving, and nourishing. It's all projection. It's all perception. If you accept that the world is as we are, it's only logical to accept that our perception of God is also as we are at any time. How we perceive ourselves is how we perceive God. So the first one is the flight or fight response, okay? The response that enables us to survive in the face of danger. This response is linked to a God who wants to protect us. We turn to this perception of God when we need to survive. God the protector fits our need for bare survival when we are faced with physical or emotional threats and danger. So that's 1. 2, reactive response. This is our creation of a personal identity. Beyond mere survival, everyone pursues the needs of I, me, and mine. We do this instinctively, and from this response, a new perception of God emerges, one who has power and might, laws and rules. We turn to this God when we need to achieve and accomplish. God the Almighty fits our perception of the world as a power struggle, where ambition and fierce competition rules. So that's the second one. 3, restful awareness response. The brain can be active or at rest, and this is its response when it wants and needs rest. The divine answer to this human need is a God who brings peace, who enables us to find a calm center in the midst of outward chaos. We turn to this God when we need to feel that the outer world isn't going to swallow us up in endless turmoil. A God of peace fills our need for inner solitude where reflection and contemplation are possible. All right, so that's number 3. 4, intuitive response. Outer knowledge is objective, but inner knowledge is intuitive. The God that matches this response is understanding and forgiving. We need him to validate that our inner world is good. Remember, we talked about got to get the inner world right before we work on our outer world. God, the Redeemer, fits a world where personal growth is encouraged and insights prove fruitful. Number 5, creative response. Humans can invent new things and discover new facts. This creative ability apparently comes from nowhere. The unknown simply gives birth to a new thought. We call this inspiration, and its mirror is a creator who made the whole world from nothing. We turn to him out of our wonder at the beauty and formal complexity of nature. God, the creator, fits our perception of the world as constantly renewing itself, where innovation and discovery are valued. 6, visionary response. Humans can directly contact the light, a form of pure awareness that feels joyful and blessed. it comes as a vision, and the God who matches it is exalted. He delivers healing and miracles. We need such a God to explain why supernatural occurrences can exist side by side with ordinary, mundane reality. A God of miracles fits our perception of a world that contains prophets and seers where spiritual vision is nurtured. Okay, lastly, 7, sacred response. A human is formed from a single fertilized cell that had no brain functions in it, only a speck of life. Even though 100 billion neurons developed from that speck, it remains instinct in all its innocence and simplicity. To match it, there is a God of pure being, one who doesn't think, but just is. We need him because without a source, our existence has no foundation at all. A God of pure being, what we refer to as the I Am, fits our perception of a world that transcends all boundaries, a world of infinite possibilities. The wonder of being human is that we can operate on so many different planes and dimensions. We don't just navigate these dimensions, we explore them. We meld them together and create new worlds for ourselves. We are multidimensional beings, and therefore we need a multidimensional perception of God. All right, so we all view God through these 7 basic lenses at different times and seasons in our lives. And we all need God to meet these needs in our lives at different times of these different seasons. Whatever spiritual practice best fits and facilitates our connection to God when we're looking through each of these different lenses is the one we should pursue during that season. All right, so this has brought us to the second thing that my brother talked about in his sermon, and I promise this part is not going to be as long. I'm not just halfway through. I'm almost done. In fact, Mom, if you want to kind of come on up to the piano. So this has brought us to the second thing that my brother talked about in his sermon on Sunday that we need the discipline to do if we want to choose greatness, and that is to course correct. We've just gone through 7 different stages or ways we can connect with God according to what our perception is at the moment or where we are on our journey. When we become aware that we've gotten off course somehow, that we're not on the trajectory to be the best version of ourselves, then we're going to have to course correct. We can do this by changing the relationships we're in. Okay, number 1, not aggressively, not angrily, but by blessing and releasing with love, just letting them fall away like those rocket boosters once they've served their purpose. Or by shifting our spiritual practice to one that is better meeting our needs for whatever season we're in. Both take 2 things that Jennifer mentioned in her prayer on Sunday, a conscious choice and discipline. So let's make that choice today to be the best version of ourselves. If greatness is a choice, let's choose that. And then let's have the discipline to follow through. Amen? Amen. All right. Let's join. Remember, we're going to join us tomorrow night at 6:30 for our continuing Wednesday night series, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. Then we'll be online 7 a.m. Friday morning for the devotion, and we will also see everybody on Sunday. We're going to end the service now by singing the song, Blessed Always. I want to stand up. Why don't you stand up?
Blessed always, blessed always, for the arms of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say amen. Blessed always.
Okay. I'm going to say bye to the people online. Have a great week. We love you. Be at peace. Now, for those of you